Good day once again from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where at this hour we are standing by for the departure of 3 of the crew members who have resided aboard the International Space Station since last September, those being the departing members of the Expedition 54 crew who are suited up inside their Soyuz MS-06 spacecraft, ready to depart the station and ready to begin the trek back home to a homecoming on the cloud-covered and icy steppe of Kazakhstan, with landing scheduled about 3 hours and 45 minutes from now. Here in the flight control room at Houston, the Orbit 3 team of flight controllers on duty presiding over their end of Soyuz departure operations. They're led by Flight Director Judd Freeling, who's at the bottom of your screen. He's joined on console to his right by Capcom Andreas Mogensen, the spacecraft communicator from the European Space Agency, who is talking to the station crew when required throughout the course of the rest of the day's activities. The landing operations, of course, are being handled half a world away at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, outside of Moscow. This live view from a balcony camera overlooking their space station flight control room, showing the Russian flight controllers at their consoles. They have been talking to the crew on board the Soyuz MS-06 since the crew entered the Soyuz a few hours ago and strapped in for the beginning of their deorbit and landing preparations. The returning crew is led by Russian cosmonaut Alexander Mazurkin. He is strapped into the center seat of the Soyuz MS-06 descent module, the middle section of the 3-section Soyuz spacecraft. He is flanked on his left by NASA flight engineer Mark Vande Hei, who is the board engineer number 1 for tonight's landing operations, as he was for launch 5.5 months ago. Joe Acaba, the NASA flight engineer, is to Mazurkin's right. Those are the 3 that are preparing to return home after 168 days in space, 168 days on board the International Space Station. They are coming home with a total of 2,688 orbits to their credit, and a mission that will have spanned 71.1 million statute miles. We'll talk more about their statistics in just a moment. Down in Kazakhstan, the focus of attention has been on weather conditions throughout the course of the last 48 hours. Very challenging weather conditions that have taxed the Russian State Commission and the search and recovery forces belonging to Rosaviatsia, the Russian civilian search and recovery team. Earlier today, the Russian Landing Commission concluded their final meeting at the Russian Mission Control Center, and after a complete review of weather conditions and the status of all deployed forces, the decision was made to proceed with a nominal landing operation in the southern landing zone just to the southeast of the remote town of Zhezkazgan, with the landing site about 90 miles to the southeast of Zhezkazgan, where a team of NASA and Russian search and recovery personnel have been housed for the past 48 hours, waiting for the go-ahead to begin their deployment in Russian Mi-8 helicopters down to the landing site. At the moment, the weather is improving, and the weather appears to be in good shape to support a nominal landing operation this evening. The forecast for landing time at the landing site itself in the south central steppe of Kazakhstan calls for an overcast ceiling at 700 feet, 3 statute miles of visibility and light fog and a few snowflakes in the area. The winds will be out of the southwest at 12 knots, gusting to 18 knots, and the temperature expected to be about 30 degrees Fahrenheit to greet Mazurkin, Acaba, and Vande Hei when they touch down 3 hours and 41 minutes from now at about 8:31 p.m. Central Time, 9:31 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be 8:31 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Wednesday morning, just 27 minutes after sunrise. As we mentioned, the team of NASA and Russian recovery support personnel deployed from the staging city of Karaganda, Kazakhstan, 2 days ago to Zhezkazgan, which is a forward staging point just 90 miles from the landing site. There are 2 aircraft of interest that remain at the Karaganda airport as part of tonight's recovery operations. No indication that they will be deployed to Zhezkazgan as well. One is the NASA Gulfstream jet that will ultimately fly Mark Vande Hei and Joe Acaba back to Houston. The other aircraft is a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft that flew other support personnel from Chkalovsky Airfield outside of Star City, Russia, and the training base for cosmonauts and astronauts flying on Soyuz vehicles. That GCTC aircraft flew on Sunday from just outside of Star City down to Karaganda. The current plan would call for the crew to be recovered after they are extracted from the Soyuz MS-06 spacecraft to be loaded into 3 separate helicopters for the flight back to Karaganda, about a 2-hour helicopter ride from the landing site back to Karaganda, where they then would split up. Again, Vande Hei and Acaba to board a NASA jet to fly back to Houston, Alexander Mazurkin to board the GCTC aircraft to fly back to Chkalovsky Airfield outside of his training base and his home in Star City, Russia. Over the past 2.5 hours, the crew on board the Soyuz MS-06, Mazurkin, Vande Hei, and Acaba, suited up in their Russian Sokol launch and entry suits, conducted good leak checks on those suits. Also, leak checks were performed on both sides of the docking interface between the Poisk module and the Soyuz spacecraft, to which it has been attached since September 13th of last year. The vestibule, the small passageway between Poisk and the Soyuz, has been depressurized down to vacuum, setting the stage for the undocking command that will take place just 14 minutes from now. That command that is sent from the Russian Mission Control Center, as you see on your screen in Korolyov, will be a 90-second command to initiate the opening of the hooks on the Soyuz side of the docking interface that have been in place, holding the Soyuz tightly in place to the Poisk module. The hooks on the Poisk or ISS side of the docking interface were opened about 2 hours ago. Thrusters on the International Space Station have also been disabled to prevent any inadvertent thruster firings during the actual time of the undocking, which is scheduled for 5:08 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time, 6:08 and 30 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. Following the physical separation of the 2 vehicles that will be induced by the pushing off of springs on both sides of the docking interface, the Soyuz vehicle will slowly back away from the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. There will be 2 separation burns of the Soyuz engines to increase its opening rate from the station itself. The first coming at 5:11 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time will be an 8-second burn to increase the opening rate by 0.53 meters per second, followed about a minute and a half later by a second separation burn, also of about 8 seconds in duration, that will continue the opening rate and create a separation rate that ultimately will take the Soyuz to a distance of about 12 miles away from the International Space Station for the deorbit burn that is scheduled 2 hours and 43 minutes from now. About 3 hours ago, just before 2 p.m. Central Time. The 6 crew members on the International Space Station had a final opportunity to say farewell to one another in the passageway at the Poisk module interface to the Soyuz spacecraft. The crew members that you see there, Alexander Mazurkin saying farewell to his colleagues, Anton Shkaplerov, Norishige Kanai of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, and Scott Tingle of NASA, who remain behind. At the moment of undocking, coming up just about 11.5 minutes from now, Expedition 54 will formally come to an end, and Expedition 55, under the command of Anton Shkaplerov, will begin. Shkaplerov took over command of the station on Monday afternoon in the typical change of command ceremony that was broadcast on NASA television. And as you can see in this replay of activities that took place about 3 hours ago, the hatches closed on both the Soyuz and station side of the docking interface in the Poisk module. This is Anton Shkaplerov completing the hatch closure that occurred at 1:58 p.m. Central Time, 2:58 p.m. Eastern Time. The undocking that's coming up will enable the Soyuz MS-06 to separate from the Poisk module on the International Space Station. As you can see in this animation, the undocking again scheduled at 5:08 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time. The Soyuz will back away to a distance of about 12 miles from the International Space Station for the deorbit burn. This will be a 4-minute, 39-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz engines to slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, enabling it to drop out of orbit to begin its descent into the Earth's atmosphere. Some 34 minutes after the deorbit burn, the pyrotechnic command will be issued to separate the 3 sections of the Soyuz vehicle: the descent module with the crew strapped into their respective seats, the only section that survives re-entry, the heat shield pointed in the direction of travel to ablate the heat that will build up to about 2,500 degrees, after which the series of parachutes will be deployed. First will be 2 pilot parachutes which extract a drogue chute from the Soyuz vehicle, and then finally the huge main parachute that slows the Soyuz to a descent rate of about 7.2 meters per second. Just a few feet off the ground, half a dozen soft landing engines will fire, and the Soyuz will be home on the south central steppe of Kazakhstan, with touchdown scheduled at 8:31 p.m. Central Time, which will be 8:31 a.m. in Kazakhstan on Wednesday morning, about 27 minutes after sunrise.
Хорошо, Гош, я принял.
There morally with the undocking, and RDR command will be sent from the panel. Yes, that's correct. It will be manually sent command from the panel.
Хорошо.
Copy that.
От пульта, да? Да, РКГ все правильно. Спасибо.
Just 7 minutes now until the undocking command is issued to begin opening the hooks on the Soyuz side of the docking interface. We're about 8.5 minutes away from physical separation. During their time on orbit, as we mentioned earlier, the crew returning to Earth tonight, Mazurkin, Van de Hei, and Akaba, will have spent 168 days in space and on the station. It was a 4-orbit, 6-hour rendezvous for them back on September 13th after their launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. They will have completed 2,688 orbits of the Earth and 71.1 million miles of travel. Alexander Mazurkin wrapping up his second space flight and a total of 334 days in space. Joe Akaba completing his third mission, 1 space shuttle assembly flight, 2 long-duration missions on the station, 306 days in space on those 3 flights. Mark Van de Hei completing his first space flight, of course, 168 days, in which he accomplished 4 spacewalks during expeditions 53 and 54.
I am preparing command R17. So the close transmitter command is sent. Gosha, as soon as you start receiving the image, could you please tell us?
Alexander Mazurkin, the Soyuz MS-06 commander, who's in the center seat of the descent module, again flanked on his left by Mark Van de Hei, and on his right by Joe Akaba, reporting that the Soyuz is ready for undocking, which is coming up just over 6 minutes from now. The International Space Station is currently flying in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator, moving from southwest to northeast over southwestern China.
020200, we have sent E2 command. We have Caddo repress. We have 3 BDUs sensors, and we are at page 41 now. We copy you and confirm. So we have mechanical contact or docking mechanism engaged. So we're at page 41.
That call from the interpreter who is providing the translation of conversations between the Russian Soyuz shift flight director of the Russian Mission Control Center and Alexander Mazurkin on board the Soyuz, indicating that we have docking mechanism power up, as we are under 4 minutes from the command to be issued to open up the hooks on the Soyuz side of the docking interface at the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station.
Yes, Mark, go ahead and activate it. The headlight R8.
Once undocking occurs, Expedition 55 will formally begin under the command of Anton Shkaplerov and his crewmates, NASA's Scott Tingle and Norishige Kanai of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, who will be a 3-man crew for the next 3 weeks until the launch on March 21st of the next trio to reside on the space station, that being Oleg Artemyev of Roscosmos and NASA's Drew Feustel and Ricky Arnold, who will lift off in the Soyuz MS-08 spacecraft from the Baikonur Cosmodrome on March 21st on a 2-day rendezvous to link up to the International Space Station and become part of Expedition 55.
Just once. Yes. Now, we are monitoring D2 and S16 from this display. At 0206, I will have to activate the D7. So D2 and 16 are not illuminated, and we are ready to send D7 command at 0206. We concur.
Хорошо. Ну и потом по вашему указанию в 0207 будем готовы выдать команду D17.
And 0207 will be ready to send D17 command.
Less than 2 minutes away from the initiation of the undocking command, which will take 90 seconds to enable the hooks on the Soyuz side of the docking interface to open, at which point springs on both sides of the interface will push off against one another to provide physical separation.
Is to be sent at the specified time. Copy that, Moscow.
Саша, посмотри, пожалуйста, на формате ТВС, горит ли виртуальный транспарант работы передатчика.
Sasha, could you please see if the transmitter functioning on display is on? No, you don't have to do this, because we are receiving the image right now. The 7 command has been sent, so the boom is drawn, and as well as the latches, G17, and the hooks are closed.
30 seconds away from the undocking command, the International Space Station now crossing the border between China and Mongolia.
Copy. 17 seconds.
Yeah.
5. At 0207, we have sent the D17 command. The hooks are closed. Indicator is not illuminated.
The Soyuz hooks are now driving open.
And approach S13 is not illuminated, but S11 is illuminated.
This view is from the external camera on the Soyuz MS-06. Should provide us a view of the Soyuz at physical separation and backing away from the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the station.
So 1 minute and a half. Copy, Moscow. So interface closed. Механсоединение is not illuminated.
Standing by for physical separation.
1 minute 15. We are standing by for the physical separation, and the SSVP mode is complete. We are receiving image. It is stable.
Undocking is confirmed.
Complete.
Undocking confirmed at 5:08 p.m. Central Time, 6:08 p.m. Eastern Time, as the Soyuz MS-06 and the International Space Station flew 252 statute miles over southeastern Mongolia. Alexander Mazurkin, Joe Akaba, Mark Vandehei on the first leg of the trip home.
We are standing by for your confirmation. Yes, Gosha, copy that. As soon as we get it, I will report it. Could you please send R5 command from the first panel? Mark, R5 command. Could you please send it? We are seeing the docking interface And we do not see any foreign objects on the docking interface. Okay, R5 command is sent. Thank you, Mark. We are receiving a very clear picture, very clear image. We're standing by for the first burn. Yes.
Again, undocking occurring at 5:08 p.m. Central Time. Expedition 55 now officially underway aboard the International Space Station. As we stand by for the first of two separation burns, this will be an automated 8-second burn of 4 of the Soyuz thrusters to increase its opening rate by 0.5 of a meter per second.
Okay, could you please send R8 command transition to the wide angle lens? Copy. D7, yes. I confirm D7 command. In 20 seconds, we're standing by for the first burn.
Now a wide-angle view from the external Soyuz television camera. Just below the crosshairs, you can see the Poisk module docking port from which the Soyuz just separated. Undocking again occurring at 5:08 p.m. Central Time. And the first of the two separation burns underway. This is an 8-second burn.
It is not illuminated anymore.
And that burn now complete, everything nominal. And the Soyuz now going into a roll program for the correct orientation for the second of the two burns coming up about 90 seconds from now, which will be a 15-second burn to further increase its opening rate from the station by 1.5 meters per second.
We see the joint GSO in attitude. Yes, we confirm. We also see joint GSO.
-20
20 seconds till the second burn. We confirm. Depot operation is on.
The second in the pair of separation burns now underway. This again a 15-second firing of the thrusters. And the second of the two separation burns complete. Everything looked great. So the opening rate now increasing between the Soyuz and the International Space Station. You see the full complex in view from the Soyuz external cameras as both vehicles pass over the far eastern coast of Russia over the Sea of Okhotsk. And there's a view of the Soyuz from external cameras on the International Space Station.
Now we have transitioned to the first manifold and sending the 8 command. Copy. So SSVP is deactivated and V18 command is being sent. Copy. Okay, we will input data for settings for the descent. Copy. The indicator is not illuminated. Copy. We are deactivating the headlight. The headlight is off. And we are transferring a route controller to transport position.
Again, this view, as the station and Soyuz have passed into an orbital sunrise of the Soyuz MS-06, which undocked from the International Space Station about 7 minutes ago. The Soyuz, with Alexander Mazurkin, Joe Acaba, and Mark Vande Hei on board, will move to a position about 12 miles away from the International Space Station for the deorbit burn that is scheduled just under 2 hours and 23 minutes from now.
Mark, please make sure that my spacesuit is not touching this handle. So we have uploaded the settings for descent, and we have the indicator descent illuminated, and we are ready to send the Go4 command. Copy. Inaudible. We sent Go4 command. Copy.
And a better view now of the Soyuz MS-06. Its solar arrays clearly in view. Again, the Soyuz comprised of 3 sections. The uppermost section is the orbital module, which has been depressurized in advance of the pyrotechnic separation of the 3 sections of the Soyuz following the deorbit burn later this evening. The crew is strapped into their respective seats in the middle section, with Mazurkin in the center seat, flanked on his left by Vande Hei and by Acaba on his right. The bottommost section is the instrumentation and propulsion module, which will have exhausted its lifetime of usefulness after the deorbit burn that's coming up in 2 hours and 21 minutes.
We consumed 9 kilograms of propellant.
Trying to find the vertical piece. I did not unlock the Sasha, Mark, Joe.
Sasha, Mark, and Joe. This is Anton. I wish you a successful flight. We are already missing you. Thank you, Georgi. This is not Georgi. This is Anton. Anton, you probably will be rich. Because I did not recognize your voice. All right. We also wish you a successful flight on board the station, and we will be standing by for the pictures from the outer space. We'll be seeing you on the ground. Thank you. Well, this is MCC Moscow. We are not saying goodbye yet. We still have work to do. Altair.
There we go.
Right now, we don't have a lot to do for a while.
Okay. See some wires. It doesn't on the way. Okay. Yeah, this one. Okay.
This is Mission Control Houston. That conversation between Anton Shkaplerov and the crew on board the Soyuz MS-06. They're tied together for the time being by a VHF communications link. Shkaplerov indicating to the crew on board the Soyuz, we already miss you. And flight controllers of the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov indicating we still have work to do. That work in front of everybody involved here includes the deorbit burn 2 hours and 18 minutes from now. That will lead to a landing of the Soyuz on the steppe of south-central Kazakhstan 3 hours and 11 minutes from now at 8:31 p.m. Central Time.
Mark, is it okay? Yes, it's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Down in Kazakhstan, the weather forecast for landing calls for an overcast ceiling at 700 feet. Visibility will be somewhat diminished, 3 statute miles, and light fog with a few snowflakes in the air. Winds out of the southwest, 12 knots gusting to 18, and a temperature of about 30 degrees Fahrenheit at landing time, which is not too bad for late February, given Kazakhstan weather conditions, which are very dynamic this time of the year. There is a team of NASA and Russian support personnel with the Russian search and recovery forces in the remote town of Zhezkazgan, some 90 miles to the northwest of the intended landing site for the crew on board the Soyuz MS-06. The current plan is a nominal landing operation this evening that would call for 10 out of the 12 Russian Mi-8 helicopters to deploy from Zhezkazgan for a 30-minute helicopter flight to the landing site to recover the crew, and then to return the crew to the staging city of Karaganda. That still could change if conditions degrade, but so far that is the nominal plan that is in play, and that was reviewed earlier today by the Russian State Landing Commission operating from the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow.
Do we have to press down, push to talk button? You know, 1 minute ago I asked a specialist about it, and they told me that, you know, they still want it to be pressed down. No problem.
Саша, давай так сделаем. Мы вам разрешаем ее отжать, но если появятся помехи, которые будут нам мешать...
Sasha, you know, it's a go to release the push-to-talk button, but if we have some interference that will prevent us from, you know, listening and receiving data, then you will have to push it again. All right, but in any case, we are standing by here, so if you want to talk to us, you know, just push your push-to-talk button. Copy that, Moscow.
Тут Москвы, Альтаиром.
Moscow, Altair. Go ahead, Sasha.
Для расширения моего кругозора.
For my awareness,
Ты сказал, что уставки...
you said that you have already entered the settings for descent, and when we will have the re-entry time on the display settings? After you have activated accelerometer, Sasha, only after that.
That conversation with Alexander Mazurkin, or Sasha Mazurkin, aboard the International Space Station's Soyuz MS-06 vehicle that you see in view, has to do with his entry into the onboard computers on the descent settings, basically the timers that will kick off the deorbit burn 2 hours and 14 minutes from now, which will be a 4-minute, 39-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz main engine to slow the Soyuz down
are there on display, and they are all
by 128 meters per second, allowing it to slip out of orbit to begin its descent back into the Earth's atmosphere. All of the Soyuz systems in great shape. The stage set for the deorbit burn and the landing of this vehicle just 27 minutes after sunrise on Wednesday morning in south central Kazakhstan near the town of Jezkazgan. After landing, the crew will be extracted by the search and recovery teams and technical specialists from RSC Energia. Assuming conditions permit, they'll have a few minutes to be placed in chairs right outside of their vehicle to have a few moments to get their land legs back and their equilibrium. The nominal plan usually calls for the crew to be carried one by one in their chairs into a nearby inflatable medical tent for post-landing medical testing before they reboard a trio of helicopters for a 2-hour flight back to the staging city of Karaganda to the northeast of the landing site itself. Once in Karaganda, the crew will split up, with Akaba and Vandahai boarding a NASA jet to be returned to Houston. Alexander Mazurkin will board a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft to be flown back to Chkalovsky Airfield just outside of his training base and his home in Star City, Russia. You will be hearing from time to time a reference to the call sign of Altair. That is the call sign for the Soyuz vehicle selected by Mazurkin as the Soyuz commander. This is Mission Control Houston with everything going well aboard the Soyuz MS-06 following its undocking from the International Space Station. The 3 crew members on board the Soyuz are now just over 3 hours away from touching down in south central Kazakhstan to complete 168 days in space and aboard the International Space Station. The 3 crew members left on board the station itself, now Expedition 55, under the command of Anton Shkaplerov, along with NASA's Scott Tingle and Norishige Kanai of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. They will be a 3-man crew for the next 3 weeks until the next trio of residents is launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, that being Oleg Artemiev of Roscosmos and 2 NASA flight engineers, Drew Feustel and Ricky Arnold. They will launch on March 21st for a 2-day rendezvous to the station, arriving at the station on March 23rd. So with that, we'll wrap up this broadcast for this evening. One more to go. That'll be our deorbit burn and landing broadcast. That will begin at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time here on NASA Television, and we'll carry that broadcast through the safe recovery of the crew down in south central Kazakhstan. For now, we'll call it a broadcast, and we'll invite you back to rejoin us about an hour and a half from now for the return of the Expedition 54 crew members on Soyuz MS-06. For now, this is Mission Control Houston.